Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Professor Karthi Govender, Ms. Mala Lutchman, Ms. Shasti Harinarayan, Mr. Piyush Khandewal, distinguished online guests, on behalf of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, it gives me great pleasure to invite you to today's recording, the third episode of Ek Anubhuti, India, A Feeling, an online travelogue series. When we travel, the only constant is change. We find ourselves surrounded by new people and new places regularly. Over time, we learn to welcome these changes. We learn to expect them. Change becomes a way of life. Whilst we travel, we find ourselves continuously pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones. We talk to random strangers. We meet new people. All this improves our confidence in our own abilities to overcome any challenges that are thrown our way. Traveling develops our self esteem and confidence. To begin with today's program, I would like to invite our very first guest speaker, Ms. Mala Lutchman, who is an author, educator, and scholar for her remarks on India A Feeling. Ms. Mala Lutchmanan is an educator, presenter, producer, author, cultural activist, and a Tamil ambassador. She was born in the magazine barracks. She spent her formative years in Chatsworth. After her family was forcibly moved to the Indian township under the Groups Area Act, she has fond memories of the communal living that Chatsworth fostered and recalls the joys of being born into and brought up by an extended family. Miss Mala went abroad on a scholarship she had won to study at the Tamil University in India. Years spent in India imbibing all the aspects of the Tamil culture, history, and the language was a priceless gift, claims Miss Mala. After receiving her BA Honours Cum Laude in India, she continued with a BA Honours, a higher diploma in education, and a master's degree at UDW. She is now currently studying towards her PhD. And great advocate of education, educating young minds, Mala teaches English at the Dambrosa Pre-Vocational School. Mala has also taught English in England. She has said her experiences living and working abroad has widened her worldview. Miss Mala Lutchmanan has many publications to her credit. Notably amongst these is President Nelson Mandela's autobiography in Tamil. In 2019, she was one of among 5 recipients from throughout the world to receive global recognition for her work in Tamil Nadu with an award. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that. And மதிப்புக்குரிய டாக்டர் சைத்தன்யா பிரகாஷ் யோகி அவர்களே, மதிப்புக்குரிய கான்சுலேட் ஜெனரல் அனிஷ் ராஜன் அவர்களே, மற்றும் பேராசிரியர் கார்த்திக் கவண்டர் அவர்களே, மற்றும் திருமதிகளே, திருவாளர்களே, உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் அன்பு வணக்கம் மற்றும் இனிய நவராத்திரி நல்வாழ்த்துக்கள். இந்த இனி வாய்ப்பினை எனக்கு கொடுத்ததற்கு மிக்க நன்றி. Thank you so much and greetings to all the esteemed guests who have joined us. It was through the kind courtesy of the MTSS that my journey really started in India. So for that, I'd like to acknowledge them. An organization which Karthi's dad played a pivotal role and continues to play a pivotal role in that community. In that organization. So India, a feeling. When I talk about this or when I hear the word itself, my smile widens, my heart sinks, and the tears start flowing because I have this kind of emotional connect with India. As soon as you disembark and you get into the departure lounge, the arrivals lounge, you are greeted by this huge Ganesha, and he has this beautiful jasmine garland around him, and that's smell, the wafting of the jasmine makes me realize that I've come home. See, I just get so silly when so that's what for me is India. As soon as I land there and I get the smell of jasmine, I see Ganesha in all his glory at the airport and all the other deities. And for me, I say, okay, I'm home now. I've traveled from Kashmir right to Kanyakumari, covering all 28 states, and there are 8 union states as well. This is a country that embraces all these states and 22 languages. But what amazes me is that although each state has its own clothing, food habits, religious behavior, its own deity, its own traditions, its own languages, like I said, yet there is so much of unity in that diversity. There's so much of appreciation and love for somebody else's cultural beliefs. And I think you can never find this anywhere else in the world. in the world. India really, really amazes me. The people of India really amaze me in this respect. I find most of my time and travels are restricted to the south. It's because most of my work is there. But even when I go to the north, the northern parts, it is still, you have that feeling of belonging, that kingship, that relationship. And that makes it for me a very, very enjoyable and a special feeling. When I look at India, and everyone looks at India as their motherland, Thai we say. So that itself will say the kind of reverence that one would give one's mother, we give to India. And that's how much we put her up on that pedestal. Also, when you look at religion in India, whether you're a religious person or whether you're an atheist, everyone has their opinion. But what's good about this is everyone's allowed to have their opinion, which we can also learn from. And whether you go to Parani or you go to the Tirupati or you go to the Meenakshi Amman temple or the Palayar temple in Tiruchi, you find that in each of these temples, there's a different kind of connect that each devotee will have. So that's how they choose which is their favorite temple. So I just want to quickly talk about this, my experience at a temple called Mundakanni Amman Temple. It's in this southern city of Mylapore. It's on, I think it's A.K. Amman Kovil Road. And A.R. Rahman lived in that street. That's where he was born and lived in that street. But this is a beautiful, lovely temple for me. And I find the connect here because it's a very famous temple, but it's a simple temple. And the deity there is Swayambam, which means was self-manifested. And there's 2 miracles that happened to me at this temple, which I want to share. I had a friend, a colleague of mine, and she was married for a long time, and she was really wealthy and tried lots of ways in medically to conceive, and she couldn't. So there was, I go to this temple because it's also has very easy access. So I told her, okay, I'm going to go to this temple and pray for you. And it was a Sunday morning, I remember clearly, and I got her up. I phoned her and I said, look, I'm at the temple. She was sleeping. It was about 4 in the morning here in South Africa. But she got up. I said, you're just going to pray now with me. And when I came back, I brought the prasadam. And when I came back, after having spent hundreds of thousands of rands trying to conceive, in a month's time, she was expecting her baby, and the child now is 10 years old. So I said, okay, maybe that's just a fluke. And then there's a friend, my friend's niece, who is also married and also was not able to have a child. And I thought she's maybe too weak to carry a child, thin. I said, okay, let's pray for her. So her mother and sister and I went to the temple on one of our trips. And we did the same thing. You know, they have the trees, and you buy a cot if you want the baby, and you tie it around the tree. But of course, you have to pray with bhakti and devotion. So we did that, and we came home, and before we knew it, this girl also had a baby, and the baby is 2. So anyone who wants to have a baby can call me. All right. India also, for me, I love the books. I love spending the long hours in the bookstores, whether they big upmarket, flashy bookstores, or the bookstores on the pavements. I love just spending time there, and they are so ridiculously cheap that I end up just buying so many of the books. But it doesn't go to waste, of course. So I'd like to include that in my feeding of in terms of the literature. Another thing that really embraces or endears me is the food. And the food items from the different states all have such unique tastes. And even within one state, you'll have a variety of food. And they've prepared, our ancestors were so great that they prepared their foods, making sure that all the dietary requirements are met in terms of your vitamins, etc. So the food is a big attraction for me. But I noticed, especially in India, this concept of friendship, and that is with college mates or university students, is very, very strong. They always have a band of friends, and they always stay together. And I find this also reflected in the movies. And for me, that that really, I loved that aspect, because you had a genuine group of friends here with no hidden agendas. They were there for you, and I've seen this so many times, and that's as a result of that. My friendship with India goes back more than 25 years, but with a lot of my friends, even my professors and my teachers, and my students at that time, we still keep in touch. So that friendship for me, I don't know if you will find that anywhere else. You find it in diaspora communities, Indian or Tamil diaspora communities, but you think that is because there's a small community here and we want to be or stay together. But in India, I find this friendship plays a huge, huge role. And like I said, reflected in a lot of the movies as well. When we talk about India and the feeling, what comes to mind? Cricket, politics, and cinema. So you can see I'm not wearing my CSK jersey today because I think they need some talking to. But nonetheless, even here you find, where's your ancestral roots? Our people will tend to support the team that comes from that place. So you can only imagine how Chennai will be like when there is a CSK game. And for me, in terms of cricket and in terms of the IPL especially, I like the razzmatazz. It's not about the worth of a cricketer. For me, it is supporting Chennai. All right, so that in terms of their cricket, they're huge on that. Politics, they have many, many political parties, but each one is allowed to have their say, but respectfully. And the opposition parties also accept what is being done or said respectfully. So they're able to live side by side a country that has 22 different languages and 36 states. That's not no mean task. And then when you come to cinema, I think that plays an important role as well, because more than just being entertainment, of late, the face of Indian cinema has changed tremendously. I mean, who would have ever thought we'll have a double Oscar winner coming out of Kudumbakam, for example? So whether it's Bollywood or Kudumbakam, I'm finding that there's a lot of new themes that people or directors were afraid to address previously, but they're addressing it now. And I've also noticed that there are a lot of women-centric movies. So when you look at cinema, people must just not think, oh, it's for a certain class of people. There are a lot of new movies that attack or address pertinent issues that we have in our society. The music for me is a big, big yes in terms of feeling. Whether I'm at the Chennai Music Festival and listening to every song in every raga, or if it's film music concert, it's the music that comes out of Chennai. It's the singers who come out of Chennai. And that totally, for me, reminds me, I need to go back. So when you look at all of this, and like I said, we refer to Chennai, or we refer to India as a whole as our Tainadu, our motherland. And I think it's everyone's dream to go to India at least once in their lifetime. And I feel blessed. I've been there many times, but it's just this calling, and it's just that it's home. So when I get there, it's always I'm going back home. Cheryl? When I go there, so for me, it's just a matter of returning home. Because Chennai is home. India is home to me. I'm a proud South African. And I say if India is my Tainadu, then South Africa is my Tandai Nadu. If that's my motherland, but it is South Africa that's also fed me and groomed me to be who I am. I think another important thing is the value system. We spoke about all these changes. We spoke about also this, everyone, most of the people are becoming very modern now in any state, in terms of how they dress, how they speak, what they eat. They become very, very modern. But I'd like to think that our value system is still there. We have this beautiful, rich, traditional value system. So I always maintain we can be as Western as we can, especially here in South Africa, because we live in a Western country. But the value system must remain. We must still be proudly Indian in terms of that. And like I said, we must also learn from India and find that unity in our diversity. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mala Lutchmanan, for sharing your wonderful experiences of India and reminding us that we need to remain grounded to our roots. Thank you once again. On screen, a very short video. I hope you all enjoyed that video. Now I would like to invite Professor Karthigasen Govender, former Human Rights Commissioner, advocate, arbitrator, and law professor, for his remarks on India appealing. Professor Govender is a barrister of the Middle Temple, England, and an advocate of the High Court of South Africa, and holds law degrees from UK, SA, and USA. Professor Govender won a Fulbright scholarship to the University of Michigan and was also the recipient of the Colenso Fellowship to St. John's College, Cambridge. He was a professor of law at the University of KwaZulu-Natal for more than 20 years and was appointed to the South African Human Rights Commission by President Mandela in 1995 and reappointed for a second term in 2002 by President Mbeki. He is currently a senior arbitrator with the South African Local Government Bargaining Council. In addition, he has also acted as a judge of the High Court in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2020. He serves on the appeal panel of the Press Council of South Africa. In 2019, he was appointed by President Ramaphosa to serve as a commissioner of the South African Law Reform Commission. Professor Govender is married to Dr. Surya Govender, and they have two children, Yesh, who is a veterinarian, and Tara Rasya, who is a registrar of pediatric surgery. Professor Govender's father's grandmother came to South Africa to work as an indentured laborer on the sugar cane plantations.
Thank you very much. I am not going to be able to address you as impressively as Mala did in Tamil, so please excuse me. I want to greet you, Dr. Yogi, Dr. Mala Lutchmanan, all the other guests. I thank you so much for this wonderful privilege to speak to you briefly today. I want to just start off by saying that in 1982, I saw the film Gandhi by Richard Attenborough. And there's two scenes in the movie that stayed with me forever. The one scene was when Gandhi, the actor playing Gandhi, meets with the British generals. And you see Gandhi sitting with his loincloths on the one side and all the British generals lined up against him on the other side, dressed in the military regalia. And one of the generals looks at him and he says, "Mr. Gandhi, do you just expect us to get up and leave India after all we've done?" And Gandhi looks at him and he says, "General, at the end of the day, that is exactly what you will do." And it's a defining moment, I think, for every liberation organization in the world, that the inequality of power that exists will someday change. And the other scene from the movie, which has resulted in also my romantic links together with my family bonds with India, is the fact that that scene in Amritsar, where General Dyer, representing the British might, representing one of the so-called most civilized nations in the world, opens fire on hundreds of Indian people that were protesting outside Amritsar. And I made it a point that one day I was going to visit the site just to have a feel of what it was about. And I did. I went there and I walked around. It just also demonstrated to me something which I think we are experiencing in South Africa, that no matter how civilized, ostensibly civilized you can do, we are all capable of giving expression to our basest instincts. We can do bad things. We can do good things like Mahatma Gandhi did, but we can also do bad things. And the Amritsar massacre is something that stayed with me as a warning. But that's a depressing part. Let me not refer to that again. So I visited India many times. I visited India perhaps about 10 times. And I did it in various capacities. And I just want to briefly reflect upon that and then give you my impressions. I visited India as a South African Human Rights Commissioner. That was a formal, official visit. I visited India as an academic. I delivered papers at various what you call deemed law schools at Chennai, in New Delhi. And then I had the incredible privilege of being at the O.P. Jindal University at Haryana State, just outside Delhi, which, as you know, the aspiration is to create a Harvard of India at that particular place. And I also was invited by the Indian government to participate in the drafting of the constitution in Nepal. And I went past India and spent some days on my way there. And the fourth purpose of visiting India was simply as a tourist. And I had a wonderful journey about a year ago, where my wife and her two cousins and I drove from Bangalore all the way to Chennai, visiting Coimbatore, visiting Pondicherry, Kanyakumari. And it was the first time in a long time I took 3 weeks off. I did not lecture, did not work, just traveled and absorbed India. And I had the same sort of feeling that Mala's referred to. So let me just reflect a little bit on how, firstly, professionally, how I was so heavily influenced by my interaction. To my mind, India is one of the amazing constitutional democracies in the world. And except for a brief period when Mrs. Gandhi imposed the state of emergency, India is being a continuous constitutional democracy. And that's why it was so vital for me that when you had the horrendous terrorist attacks, I think it was in 2005, in Mumbai and various other parts of India, you didn't resist. You didn't react and become a Pakistan. I don't wish to be disrespectful, or some other country where you curtailed fundamental liberties. You dealt with the problem and you still preserved your essential culture as a constitutional democracy. That's what makes India great, to my mind. And for me, the fact that you have the rule of law, the fact that you have an independent court and the highest court, which is respected throughout the world, held wonderful lessons for us in our initial years. My first visit to India was to meet with the Indian Human Rights Commission. And the Indian Human Rights Commission is one of the preeminent human rights commissions in the world. The chair of the Indian Human Rights Commission is always a former Chief Justice of India. And I have wonderful gifts from them. I have a lovely gift from Justice Balakrishnan. I have a wonderful plaque that Justice Rajendra Babu gave me when I met with him. And what we learned from the Indian Human Rights Commission was the necessity to be both independent, and effective from the government, and to be seen to be doing that. And I think the success that, and I say this without sounding arrogant, I hope, that we had during our term was due to large part to our interactions with organizations like the Indian Human Rights Commissions. And I think they've continued to thrive. So from a professional perspective, then, our interaction with the law schools in India have also been deeply enriching. I've met wonderful Indian academics. We've collaborated on a variety of issues. And I hope that when I left the law school, we had a number of protocols and agreements with Indian law schools, and I hope they continue to have that. For the reason that we are very similar. We have massive disparities in the society. We are not China. In actual fact, it's easy to govern in China because you don't have a democracy. You don't have to go through all the processes that a democracy has to go through. When people criticize President Ramaphosa for not imposing economic plan on South Africa, it's a misunderstanding of the fundamentals of the society. If you're sitting in China, he'd just sit up with his advisors and say to the country, tomorrow we're imposing this plan. In India, you can't do that because you've got to take people with you. Similarly, We can't do that here. We've got to take people with you. But we've chosen a constitutional democracy because human experience has shown that it is the best system that we can come up with to prevent a misuse of power and to prevent autocratic rule. So the lessons from India have been very, very important. And I want to say this, that I've read a lot about Jawaharlal Nehru, partly because I think he, and I say this with respect, I don't wish to offend anybody, I think that he had perhaps a more difficult task than Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was a very disciplined, principled person, but he didn't have to make those difficult choices when you exercise real power, when you exercise public power. And what Jawaharlal Nehru had to do was to move the country with all the pressures of power that comes with that. So I think, from a professional perspective, there's considerable amount that we've learned from India, and I think we should continue to do so. Just to share something with you, I don't think it's I can share it with you, but I had a lovely dinner with Dr. Freni Janwala. You remember she was our first speaker of the National Assembly, and she accompanied Nelson Mandela to his first visit to India. And most of you that are old enough will remember just how the Indian society responded to the Mandela visit. It was incredible. It really was incredible. India gave him a wonderful treatment. And she said that they then had a private meeting with Rajiv Gandhi. And Rajiv Gandhi said to Mandela, Mr. Mandela, we will give you whatever you want to. Make any request. India stood by you. I am prepared to give you whatever you want to. And Mandela thought about it for a minute, and he said, Mr. Gandhi, I've decided on what I want. And Amit Kathrada and Freni Janwala was trying to signal to him, no, please just stop for a minute. Let us go, have a cup of coffee, think about what our request will be, and we'll come back and speak to Rajiv Gandhi was then Prime Minister of India. And Mandela said, no, I've made up my mind. Mr. Gandhi, we want you please to buy us a building in the center of Johannesburg to host the ANC headquarters. And he decided on Shell House. And so the Indian money actually finances, but Mrs. Janwala said they tried so hard to persuade him. They took him aside. They said to him, listen, they're giving you this carte blanche. You just want to buy a building in a derelict place. It's not going to work. Please stop. But he just was adamant that that's what he wanted. And Rajiv Gandhi bought him that building. So our links with India go far. So let me say a few things about what I noticed when I'm traveling in India. And Ms. Banwal, your introduction was spot on. When you travel to open your mind. And sometimes when I'm on the plane, I get irritated with South Africans saying, oh, in South Africa, we do it like this. And look, they don't do it the same way in India. And I've got to stop myself by saying we don't have the situation that India is faced with. And so people that are listening to this, please understand that when you travel to a country, just leave behind your preconceptions. Just go there and absorb the culture, what the country has to offer, and you grow as a result of that experience. Don't be judgmental. So here's a couple of points I want to make. The first point is this. I've traveled every 2 or 3 years to India, and I've been astounded at the level of growth. And I've seen the 5-6% economic growth that India has engaged in over the last decade or so. I've seen it being manifested in the country as a whole. Your infrastructure, the airports, the ease with which you travel, the hotels, the fact that people are being uplifted out of poverty. It's an incredible achievement, and you're doing it again. And I'm not saying China did it easily, but you're doing it within the constraints of a constitutional democracy. Notice those things. Those are fundamental things that impact on the lives of people. The second point I want to make is that there's been this incredible technological and scientific advancement. I was watching a program yesterday on the Mumbai railway station that the British built in the 19th century, and how it functions with technology now. So there's been that incredible technological development in so many respects. But simultaneously, and this is that's not contradiction, but I find interesting, is the fact that simultaneously there's been this continuous commitment to spirituality. Sometimes you find that people, if they go the scientific route, the spiritual part is less trodden upon. But I notice in my visits to India, even though I see this commitment to science, there's also not a divesting of their commitment to spirituality, which I found quite interesting. The third thing I want to make is that when I travel to India, I just sometimes want to stop and just watch things. So I love going to Saravana store in Chennai. And I don't shop. Well, I do a little bit, but I let my wife and the cousins just go there. And I did this with, I think it's called Nalli's, right? The sari shop. Is it Nalli's? Yeah. And I just try and find a spot and just watch. And I just watch the Indians working. And this sense of industry, the sense of the work being a passion or a real commitment. It's almost like sitting and watching a beehive and all the bees working in order to engage in an objective, a common objective that is going to result in success. A couple of years ago, I went to deliver a paper, and then I met my wife afterwards, and we traveled around together with some friends of ours, and we went to a guy called Mr. Ayalu. He was the guy that makes the Indian dance costumes in Chennai. I mean, it's pronounced Ayalu, and Surya was taking quite a long time. So I walked into his factory, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I went back to our combi and got other people to come and see. Everywhere in the small room, there were little platforms, and people were working, manufacturing Bharatanatyam costumes. And it just demonstrated the sort of work ethic. And when you see that sort of work ethic, you've got to recognize that this is a country on the march. I travel, I'm not sure whether it's permissible to mention this, but I travel with a friend of mine now called Karunanidhi, Mr. Karunanidhi. He runs an organization called Welcome Tours. And the one thing, and I probably traveled with him and sent my father with him and sent other judges, etc. Despite all the growth in the Indian economy, despite the fact that you have so many things that's going for you, the hospitality that I received on my first visit to India is just replicated every time. And the courtesy and the treatment that I get is second to none. And I travel regularly because of my job, except recently, and I never get the sort of treatment and the courtesy that you get as you get in India. And it's not just because I know Karun, but I think it's just the way in which you treat tourists and people that are coming there. So let me end by saying that when I was in Cambridge, I had the wonderful privilege. I was at St. John's College, Cambridge, and I met an Indian oceanographer. He was also on scholarship to Cambridge. And I wrote something recently, and I referred to him. One day he knocked on my door, and he said, "Oh, you got to come and meet the head of the Indian IEC, who was also in Cambridge." I think his name was Mr. He was a Sikh, and his name just eludes me now. Dr. Banakar, who was the oceanographer, then arranged for a meeting with the head of the Indian Electoral Commission. And this was about 2002. And he explained to us over tea how the Indian electoral system operates. And if India is famous for nothing, if they only had the electoral system that gets, 800 million people voting or something along those lines in 3 weeks, and results in an election which people generally don't challenge, but most importantly, which results in a transfer of power every now and then. That is a phenomenal achievement and is worth just going and visiting the country. So the last point I want to make is that when we visited, we traveled, as I said, from Bangalore. We visited the Shiva temple in Bangalore. And we sat in front of the statue of Shiva. And there was this young lady singing. And for a moment, I thought I was in paradise. I'm not a particularly emotional person. I've trained myself, because I'm in court so often, to control my emotion. But we sat there, and we just, as if we were transported somewhere else. It was like an out-of-body experience. And I must say that, together with the temple and the statue of Thiruvirul at Kanyakumari, was the highlight of the visit. And so I look forward to future visits and interactions with India. I urge people to really look at India and visit, because you'd come back very different. My daughter went. She went with her husband, and now she's planning a trip for all of us back to India as soon as the COVID's over. So do yourself a favor. It's a wonderful country to visit. It has incredible history. And as Mala's pointed out, there is this bond. You do feel it, especially if South Africans of Indian descent. And I wish you everything of the best. And thank you for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you very much, Professor Karthik Govender, for sharing your lessons and beautiful memories of India with us. Now that we have come to the end of today's program, we will have vote of thanks by my colleague, Ms. Shisti Harinarayan.
Namaskar. On behalf of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, we would like to say great thank you to our special guests for Bharat Ek Anubhuti, India a Feeling, with today being the third episode. We would like to express deep gratitude to our guests, which are Ms. Mala Lutchmanan and Professor Karthigasen Govender. Your intriguing experiences have definitely left something etched in all our hearts. Thank you so much for your dynamic remarks. We would like to say thank you to Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Ms. Cheryl Banwarilal, Mr. Piyush Khandelwal. Most importantly, we would like to say thank you to you, our online guests and viewers. Thank you for your contribution in watching today's program. Please like all SVCC social media pages and stay tuned to our social media pages for what's happening next. We will now see you at the next Bharat Ek Anubhuti. Do catch us. Namaskar.